So we've got a great panel for you today with three very talented creators with a collective following of more than 60 million people that are averaging over 200 million views a month across their social media channels, which, by the way, is more than any single broadcast network delivers in a month. Alongside them is a producer, manager, and entrepreneur who has collaborated with all three of them and has arguably cracked the code for growing artists into household brands and helping them platform into traditional media. So with that said, let's dive in with some questions for King Bach, Hannah Stocking, Rudy Mancuso, and John Shahidi. Bach, I'm going to start with you. You've kind of become the definition of a multi-hyphenate through your work beyond the internet. Was that always part of your plan, was to grow into traditional media opportunities?
No, my initial plan was, I wanted to be the biggest movie star in the world, right, as a kid. And in doing that, I realized there's gonna be different checkpoints in order to get to where you need to be, right? And in realizing that, I saw that I couldn't just be a movie star, I had to be a brand. Now, through doing that brand, it became through doing different business opportunities, and got my new clothing line here. You guys should check it out, thinkingofyouth.com. And it's just different things that you have to do to get to your goal, because it's not just about you, it's about the people you, infect, the people that you touch. So I guess you just gotta do it all.
And who are some of the people that inspired you along the way?
People that inspired me, as far as social media, Donald Glover. He started on YouTube, and that was one of the reasons that I started doing YouTube. I wanted to create my own path, A lot of actors, you have to do the auditions and, all the meetings, and I saw Donald Glover create his own lane. So I decided to create my own lane. Donald Glover, Will Smith, those are...
That's great.
Yeah.
So Hannah, you're somebody who has created a brand that could really be described as smart humor. So why don't you tell us how you arrived at that format and what sort of challenges and opportunities you've been experiencing along the way?
Well, I graduated college in 2014 with a double major in biology and chemistry. And my plan was to become a doctor, so in order to be competitive with that, I took on embryonic stem cell research and differentiating that into neurotransmitters. And then I tapped into social media, and it wasn't an accident, it was all strategic. And I'm incorporating my background in science into that and making it more, instead of like a boring science show, I'm trying to make it very fun and funny and very engaging.
That's great. So do you see this as an area that is going to present you with even more opportunities as it's really growing as a category?
Absolutely, it's growing a lot. My Instagram growth has been 125% the last year. On average, I'm growing 20,000 followers a day. And that's really just what I'm focused on.
Awesome. So Rudy, you have consciously navigated across multiple platforms to grow your brand in both comedy and music. Tell us about that and how it impacted the content that you're making today.
Well, for me, it all started with music. I walked over to a piano, my mother said, when I was about 5 years old, and I fell in love with the idea of making music on this, at that time, this toy. So music has always been the first passion, and then I started discovering all these different platforms in which I could tell stories. So I actually had to learn the skill of storytelling and comedy, and to me, comedy and music are very closely related. It's all about rhythm and timing, so they complement each other quite well. So I pretty much use these platforms and use the humor and the storytelling to do what I ultimately love the most, which is create music. So everything I do, everything from the days of making 6-second videos on Vine to 20-minute YouTube videos today, to developing a show, all incorporates my music in some capacity.
Is there one that you prefer over the other, comedy versus music, or do you kind of see yourself as pioneering a brand new genre that mashes up the two?
Well, I definitely have passion for both, but as I said, what I've learned over the course of the past 5 years is how closely related they are, especially when it comes to timing and the idea of rhythm, and emulating rhythm and combining it in interesting ways. Music and comedy are very much one and the same to me, and blending them in unique ways is the most interesting thing to me.
That's great. So John, you've got a great eye for discovering new talent and helping those artists grow their brands. Tell us a little bit about your approach to the strategy that you put in place with them, how you're helping produce content, what Shot Studios is really doing.
Yeah, well, you know, what we saw 2 years ago when we pivoted from what we were an app at the time, and that's where I actually met all three, Hannah, King Batch, Rudy, and a few of the others that we work with right now. We just saw that, you know, the world of mobile entertainment, you know, especially with mine and my brother's background, which was more of a tech development background at the time, was so focused on actually building out platforms and not necessarily building out the content that these platforms need. And they need them every day. Every day, you know, kids are getting older. Kids are being old enough to get on mobile and sign up for these networks. So we just saw an opportunity of, you know, teaming up with content creators who knew how to serve content to these younger, to the younger audience, and helping them build out their teams and infrastructure to create a longer term plan. And that's why we shifted this direction and said, you know what, instead of building out the technology, let's serve the content that the technology needs. And that's why we teamed up. Hannah, Batch, Rudy, Lele, Anwar were the first few that we teamed up with to do this.
So what do you look for when you're trying to figure out who the next big personality is? And especially these days, you've been starting to work with traditional artists as well.
Mm-hmm. We look at, kind of look at it like there's different markets and not just territories, even though we do look at territories, but also verticals, right? Like Batch is growing and is soon going to dominate the urban comedy space. Rudy is dominating the music comedy and music space in general. You know, he's got his first song was on Spotify a few months ago, and it's got millions of streams on Spotify alone, let alone the views that it has on YouTube. And Hannah now getting, you know, focusing on STEM and education, and now we're working together with YouTube and Google and their teams to really serve the proper content that we feel is important to our audience, which is mostly 92% of our audience between the ages of 13 and 24. So we look at like what are different ways that we could serve content to everyone, and then markets as well. Back when we had the Shots app, our largest market was Brazil. And so we started paying more and more attention to Brazil. And when we were going around to raise money for the app, we would pitch on how big Brazil was and how we wanted to, you know, kind of be like the WeChat of Brazil, and no one really understood. And Brazil was a country of, although it's a country of over 205 million people, and you know, although it's kind of almost a second world country, 75% of the country's connected to high-speed internet, no one really understood. So now we're going back to plan A of Brazil, and with Rudy, his Brazilian background, Anita, who's an artist who's the biggest star in Brazil, who's signed to Shot Studios, Alok, who's the second biggest star in Brazil. That's now helped grow Hannah and Batch, and Rudy, who is half Brazilian, but Hannah and Batch, who I don't know if they speak 2 words of Portuguese, their second largest market is Brazil. So kind of this, you know, when you look at all these different verticals and these different territories, and when we collaborate all together, it helps us grow in these different verticals.
That's great. So obviously there's a large audience of entrepreneurs and investors, new startups here. Can you guys talk about how, and it's really for all 4 of you, how do you work with brands and new platforms and new technologies? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Which way?
Whoever wants to jump in.
I'll jump in. So when it comes to collaborating with brands, I think the most important, I think I speak for all of us when I say this, maintaining that creative control is the most important thing. The brands who allow us to maintain that control and do what we know we can do best, always produce the best results without fail. Mm-hmm. So I know for me, when I'm given this full creative control, I kind of look at all the parameters and restrictions if there are any, and I think about all the possibilities to create something truly impactful and viral. It's what we've been trained to do the best. I just recently did this Brita sponsorship with Steph Curry, and luckily everyone from Steph Curry's team to Brita to the agency gave me full creative reign to do what I wanted, and because of that, we created a piece that was picked up around the country and it went viral. And to me, I was given the opportunity to make the stupidest, cheesiest, but catchiest song in the world. I did it, we put it out, and it worked. So as long as they give us that opportunity and that freedom, we're gonna make it work. It's our responsibility to make it work while also making it twice as interesting and impressive as our regular content. The branded content has to be twice as good as your regular content, because you have to disguise the fact that you're selling something. And just instead of selling a product, we just sell great.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of what he said, I think the key importance is to make it look organic. You know, if it looks like an ad, or you know, your fans, they sense that from a mile away, and they instantly reject it. So you have to make it look organic. So that goes along with doing brands that you like. You know, if you're into sports, hit up Gatorade. You know, something, whatever's in your market, whatever's in your lane.
I think the Brita one's a great example, because Brita, when they approached us, the Brita partnership, Rudy didn't know who Steph Curry was. You know, which is crazy, I know, but Rudy didn't know who Steph Curry was. And that's the first thing we told Brett. I was like, hey, that's great, but Rudy doesn't watch basketball. He doesn't know who Steph Curry is. And they're like, well, that's fine, because Steph Curry wants to get into music and is a big fan of Rudy. And that's when I approached Rudy. I said, hey, Rudy, you're not playing basketball with him. This isn't a sports sponsorship. You're going to actually make a song with him. And Bretta was actually really great to work with, because they pretty much just told us, just don't curse in this thing. You know, don't curse and don't show bottled water brands. And they let us do what we want to do, and I think that's why the Bretta, I don't know if folks have seen it here, but I mean, it went completely viral, not just on the internet, but outside. You know, from ESPN to Fox Sports to, you know, it was trending #1 on YouTube for a solid 5 days straight, and it was just a great example of a great partnership that let us do. And gave us creative control, but then also going back to the collaboration, right? It introduced Rudy to this sports audience. Now Fox Sports and ESPN are talking about Rudy Mancuso, but then also 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds who don't know who Steph Curry is, because Rudy's not the only person who doesn't know, now are introduced to this funny guy, Steph Curry, you know, in their eyes. You know, the audience, you know, we got to remember this, you know, every day someone's turning 13 years old. When we went to Coachella a couple years ago as a team, Lele Pons, who's also a creator we manage, when Ice Cube came on the stage, Lele goes, oh my God, it's the guy from Barbershop.
Yeah, it was really bad. It was really bad.
You remember that? I remember that. And we just forget. It's like, you know, everyone's getting older every day, and every day someone new's born, or someone new's turning 13, and you just have to always remember. And if you don't remember, then you turn into a dinosaur. So you've got to, you know, just always remember to stay young. And I think that's what was brilliant of Steph Curry, to say, you know what, I trust these guys. I'm going to do something, because I want to, you know, Steph Curry is now saying, I want to know this internet audience who doesn't know me as well.
No, and it was super entertaining, right? It's not uncommon to see a Super Bowl commercial trend and go viral, but, you know, out of those cycles, to see something that's just that entertaining and funny, I think that's why it did so well. Mm-hmm. Anything to add, Hannah? Or?
Oh yeah, well, just piggybacking off of what everybody else has said, is that no one knows their audience like the creator knows them. And it was really interesting. I recently did a campaign for Aeropostale, and there was a lot of other models there, and I just thought it was funny because there was a big inspiration photo board there, and half of those photos were photos from my Instagram. And so doing that, the photographer started asking me about, you know, creative things that we could do, and then the results were amazing, and the fans really took it in, and it was great.
And I think just one more thing, and Johnny here has taught me this. I'm always trying to get a piece of the company, you know, because if I feel like I have a piece of it, then I'm going to promote it like it's my own. You know, most of the movies that I do, I have back end on them. So when I promote them and it goes trending, then I'm not only am I happy, but you know the producers are also happy as well. You know.
Absolutely.
All right, listen, I knew who Steph Curry was. Here was the thing. I knew him by face. I'm not a sports guy, so I had to educate myself, and that feels clarifying. Continue.
So this segues into, there's an interesting conversation happening right now, I think, about the responsibility of creators and the content that they're making, especially in light of some recent events with a couple of YouTubers, Logan Paul and PewDiePie. We don't necessarily need to go into the detail of what they did, but I'm just curious to understand how you guys think about the responsibility you have with a large and particularly young following. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I think we know as adults that this responsibility that we've been given, you know, and I learned early on when I create my content, I create content for myself. That's how I started off. And when you're smaller, people, they accept it because no one else is looking. But the larger your audience becomes, the more responsibility you have, you know? So I stopped using guns in my videos because I saw that it influenced kids, you know? And it's just...
Minimize cursing.
Yeah, minimize
over the last
cursing.
like 6 to 8 months, even before these, we don't do things because of what other people do, because obviously we're a little bit separate and our brand's different, but over the last 6 to 8 months, we've, sorry to cut you off.
No.
But, we've been wanting to find, so, again, our audience is mostly between 13 and 24, which is if you think about it, it's that area that Disney doesn't really reach. Disney's got from the 2 to 3, 5-year-old up to 13, and then with the ABC and ESPN networks, they have the 20s and 30 and 40-year-olds, but they're missing that group, that 13 to 24-year-old. So what we, as a team, we sat down back in over the summer is how do we find that balance between the edgy content that people want to see on the internet and family friendly, because we can't come out with G-rated, and and the first thing we said is, all right, guns and violence and even plastic guns, even if it has the orange thing at the end, it's clear it's a plastic gun, out. Knives, out. Cursing, we're creative enough to replace the F word with something else, and if it's really, really necessary, let's use the beep. Editor. So that's been us. That's been our kind of, it was our goal for 2018 to be a tad bit more family friendly. So we started this process back in June, July of last year, and we're sticking with it. And we just know that we have this young audience, and we've got to, we're gonna have kids one day, and we just know that, we've got to serve appropriate content to keep them engaged and keep our numbers growing, but at the same time, no need to be an a-hole, we're creative enough. These are real talented creators here on stage. These are musicians, comedians. So when you're creative enough and you've got these ideas, it's just kind of think outside the box and replace that. We're not in the views business. We actually, if you ask any of them, they probably don't really know what they got and views for the last few videos. We're more in the watch-through business. The number that we look at is the watch-through rate on our videos. It's a number that we have on all the boards in our office. We don't look at views and following and all that stuff. I mean, we pay attention, but the bigger number is retention, because we're telling stories in all our videos. We're telling stories in all our songs. So there's a beginning, middle, and end. So in order to improve that beginning, middle, and end, you've got to look at that retention rate. And then as a company, on an average, we have a 79% watch-through rate on any of our videos. 79% of our videos are watched through at the end.
And you're making them longer and longer.
Yeah. We were actually at, in the 80, 81% when we were 3 to 5 minute videos. And Rudy released a video in December, superhero lawsuit, and I think that video is 16 minutes.
17, yeah.
Yeah, and that video, 17-minute video, has a high 70% watch-through rate. So we more than tripled the length of our video, but people still watch it till the end. So those are the things that we pay attention to, and it's creativity. He didn't have to drop any F-bombs in there. He didn't have to use guns or anything like that to get those views.
Right. Each of you guys have a a passion for music, and it definitely plays a role in the content that you're making. I know Rudy, obviously in particular, but would love to hear a little bit about each of your strategy around the music side and why that plays such a prominent role in what you're doing.
Well, we make content. We create daily, on a daily basis, and for me, I know the strategy has been incorporate all of my music in some capacity in everything that I do. Whether it's a comedy sketch or a live performance or an interview, my music is going in there somehow. I'm sneaking it in to almost every avenue. So, as I said before, because comedy and music are in the same bubble to me, and have always been, they're always complementing each other. I've blended them, which has been my strategy. How can I get the largest outreach for my music while also maintaining these characters I've created and telling stories? Blend them. So it could be a dramatic piece that's last 5 minutes. It could be a 17-minute sketch. My music is going in there. It could be the score. I might not even credit it, but it's going in there. So my strategy has been sneak every piece of music, whether it's a piano score or a 3.5-minute song on Spotify, into my content. So you can find my music and the comedy sketches, and you can be directed to the comedy sketches from my music.
I incorporated based off of emotion. I went to film school, and something that I learned is that you can have a piece without music, and when you add an element of music, it inspires an emotion, whether it be happy, sad, angry, and that's how I fuel it. And even at home, if you're like going through something, if you listen to music, it can instantly change your mood. And as content creators, I think I speak for all of us, our videos, we want people to forget about their past. If they're having a bad day, we want them to forget about that, and for that little time, whether it be 17 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, enjoy that time. And music is a key asset to that.
Yeah, I think music is very good for creating emotion in videos, and I know because of the team I'm surrounded with, there's a lot of very talented musicians. I edit all of my videos, and I think it's also an art form in itself to sound design a video to really give it that extra punch in it.
Yeah. And we also find that with our videos, we've been able to break music and break artists. Almost all the songs that we use in our videos, like Hannah will use a Marshmello song in our video, and it'll start luckily, all our artists are independent, so we could do whatever we want with the music without being demonetized or taken down or restricted in territories, with the exception of Anita, who signed to Warner Music, but they allowed us to restructure her deal to use her music in our videos. So, of the 5 artists that we have, we could use their music in our videos, and it actually makes the experience of the videos better, instead of buying cheap royalty-free music for $25, but then also drives traffic to the music, which starts charting our musicians. So it's this really cool partnership. Hannah will call me and say, hey, can I use this Alesso song real quick? Or can I use this Marshmello Anita song real quick? Of course. And like she says, she edits it, so she'll drop the song in there. She'll credit the artist in the description. Artist gets the traffic. And it's a really cool way that we're now approaching music that's opened the eyes of all 3 of the major labels. Before they were frowning on this, and now we're looking to partner with them, because now they're saying that our videos bring music discoverability and help songs chart.
I think that kind of collaboration that you guys have is pretty unique. I mean, the fact that you guys are all kind of promoting each other's stuff, you don't really see that, certainly not in the traditional media space to this extent. I think you guys do a great job of that on a consistent basis. So I want to hear a little bit about what each of you has coming up. What's next? What should we be looking out for?
All right, well, this year I think is going to be revolving a lot around releasing music. I've recorded a lot. I've been producing all of last year, and this year I really want to release it. As many songs as I can that I'm passionate about. And we're developing a TV show on a major network that I can't really disclose now, but it's very much what I've been talking about. It blends music and comedy in an interesting way. So everyone will be hearing more about that in a couple of months. So between releasing music, keeping up with the content, which never stops, and developing this show, I'm busy.
For me, it's I have 5 movies coming out this year.
Jesus.
I have one coming out. One came out last week on Netflix called Where's the Money? Have one coming out in 9 days on Netflix called When We First Met, and then a couple in theaters. So I'm doing those movies and shooting more movies this year as well. And I just launched this clothing line, Thinking of Youth. If you guys are interested, see me after and we'll talk. But so yeah.
For me, just keeping extremely focused and creating content. It's how I started, and it's really going to help me create and further the show that I'm working on with incorporating science within it.
I have really two jobs. Is my number one job, I always tell them my biggest job is making sure that they stay focused, right? Rudy wants to, he wants to win an Emmy for his show that's coming out on the streaming network this year. He's staying focused, and I'm helping him build out the team and resources if he needs more music, more writers. Batch wants to do more movies. Sometimes he's humble, sometimes he's not, but he's being humble right now about he has 2 shows that are trending right now on Netflix, or 2 movies, I'm sorry. So he wants to do more movies, help him, develop those and do those right. Hannah wants to develop her shows. She has actually a series coming out with Attention, but then also her own show that's going to incorporate STEM. But then also making sure that the business is built in the background, right? Like, although we have great brand partners, there's also businesses that we want to develop. There's certain products that, instead of doing an endorsement deal with the product, we're teaming up with a company to build out the products and every person's going to have their own individual one. So those are the 2 things that I'm really, one is making sure they stay focused, and on the existing platforms as well. They are growing on Instagram and YouTube, and those are 2 platforms that can never be forgotten about. Those are our secret weapons. That's why they're getting the 7, some 8-figure checks for these from these networks, because of the secret weapon that we have. So we've got to stay focused there as well. Stay focused with these new projects, and then build businesses around them.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys for your time today. Please give them a round of applause.
Thank you.